Hello and welcome. I am Allison Horowski, Co-Executive Director of the Women's Learning Partnership. On behalf of my Co-Executive Director, Layla Austin, and my colleagues at WLP, I thank you for joining us for today's event, Accelerating Women's Rise to Political Power. It is fitting that this event takes place as part of the UN Commission on the Status of Women. This year marks the 30th anniversary of the Beijing Conference and the groundbreaking platform for action that came out of it. As we reflect on that important milestone, our partnership is also celebrating one of our own. We were founded 25 years ago by women's organizations from the Global South who are looking to deliver on the agenda of Beijing, but who recognize the need for learning, exchange, and solidarity through meaningful and sustained collaboration. And today, we are a close-knit partnership of 20 organizations strongly rooted in the Global South, working together for women's rights. For 25 years, advancing women's leadership and agency has been at the center of our work because it is only when women have a voice in the decisions that impact their lives that we will truly build a more just and sustainable future. From Brazil to Mauritania to Morocco to Nigeria to Jordan to Kazakhstan to Pakistan to Indonesia and beyond, the partnership has been working on women's political participation on multiple fronts, including training women candidates for office, training election monitors, sensitizing journalists to cover elections in a more equitable way, engaging youth to be more involved in the political process, and providing tools and resources to navigate digital violence and backlash. With our partners, we are now co-creating a women's leadership accelerator tailored to each context that will provide focused workshops, skills building, mentorship, and networking to support women candidates running for office. I am very pleased to introduce today's moderator, Hafsat Abiola Castello. Hafsat is a Nigerian human rights and democracy activist and founder of the Kudirat Initiative for Democracy, KIND, an organization that works to promote civil society and strengthen democracy in Nigeria. And we are also honored that Hafsat is a board member of WLP. Hafsat, thank you so much for being here today, and I turn it over to you.
Thank you, dear Allison and Layla. Thank you for also organizing this critical conversation. Today, members of the audience, it's our pleasure to share with you some of the real anchors of the work that we do. As Allison explained in our introduction, Women's Learning Partnership is a kind of cooperative, or if you like, an exchange of grassroots organizations in different countries. The organization has grown through so much, but I want to talk to these incredible partners about something that seems that really hard for us to shift. So from Beijing, the Platform for Action, the issue of women's political leadership was highlighted as critical for achieving gender equality, obviously, because political decisions matter for our lived reality. And yet we're seeing the numbers are not really moving. We're not getting women elected into political office. So today I want us to talk to our partners in Indonesia, in Pakistan, and also in Brazil, and to find out why are things not changing and how can we accelerate the rate and pace of change. If you allow me, I'd like to share some bios of the people speaking today. I'll begin in Brazil with Andrea. Andrea is the Senior Program Coordinator at Cidadania Estudo Pesquisa Informação e Ação, which, sorry about the bad Portuguese, Andrea, but it means citizenship, study, research, information, and action. Or if you like, you can just say SAPIA, which is what we generally say. She's a senior program coordinator at SAPIA and a WLP regional director. And then we also have with us this time from Pakistan, Rabea Hadi Shah. Rabea is the advisor and Women's Learning Partnership Lead at Howrah Publication and Information Service Foundation. Previously, she served as Director of Advocacy and Ending Violence Against Women at AF, the Howrah Foundation, where she monitored progress and policy discussions. She also implemented many projects. Last but not least, we have with us from Indonesia, Siti Nurjana. Siti has been the director of the Women and Youth Development Institute of Indonesia since 2009. She has interacted with, designed, and conducted trainings for women in district assemblies, women activists, grassroots youth, and designed and implemented assessments focused on women's political participation. In the past 15 years, she's been working closely with multiple stakeholders, including women's political caucus, political parties, and the media to strengthen the capacity of female legislative candidates at the provincial level. So I welcome all the panelists. I would actually like to begin with Brazil. Andrea, despite electing a woman president in 2010, and I still remember the election of Dilma Rousseff, it was so exciting around the world. It sent such a positive and powerful signal from Brazil. However, Brazil still has one of the lowest levels of female political representation in Latin America, ranking almost last. At the same time, the majority of Brazilian women are politically active in terms of voting. Can you tell us more about the evolution of women's political leadership in Brazil and what some of the largest barriers are?
Thank you, Women's Learning Partnership, for putting together such an important event. And thank you, you have said, for your question. And by the way, your Portuguese was very good. In Brazil, the situation of women in politics, it's indeed very peculiar. You're right. On one hand, we have a very strong presence of women in social movements, being active players in various spaces such as NGOs, labor unions, medical and educational professional associations, just to mention some. We also are the majority of the population, 51%, representing more than 100 million women. And we are also the majority of the electorate. We are 53% of the Brazilian electorate. But on the other hand, the political power structure in Brazil is historical, patriarchal, dominated by men, and still does not correspond to the reality of the women's situation in society. It's not a welcoming environment for women. It's a dispute of territories. Men do not want women occupying their space. And it's important to mention that it's not a debate about left or right parties. Even if it's more accentuated on the right, we see this resistance also on the center and on the left political parties. And it's not also a matter of saying that women do not want to hold political positions, that women do not like power. This is an argument that we cannot use anymore. Women are struggling for many decades to have the right to be in this space because you understand that it's only by being there that we will be able to change this very unfriendly, patriarchal, and violent political structure that we have in Brazil. And it's because of this reason and struggle that we have been changing this scenario. It's very slow pace, but I do believe that we have been changing it. And regarding your question about like the largest or the major barriers that we see in Brazil, I would say like the major one, it's like cultural barrier regarding like gender identities and the social roles that culture insists to describe to men and women. although we represent around 48% of the labor force, and we are increasingly occupying more leadership position in various areas in the country, and we are higher educated than men. Also, like you mentioned, we are like one of the few countries in the region that twice elected a woman as president. The disparity in the division of domestic and care duties creates additional challenges for women political participation. So the cultural barrier, it's still very present. Cultural values that insist to place women in a very naturalized position as caregivers. So the women need to respond to domestic responsibilities while also pursuing their professional and political career. Just to give some data, while men expend around 11 hours a week doing household tasks, Brazilian women expend almost double of these hours. So any dispute in the political arena will not be fair, considering the time that women have to dedicate to it. In this sense, a major challenge is to deconstruct the social rules in the imagination of society. Having as women president twice, I believe that was very important message to society and to women particularly, showing that this is a position that women should and can hold. Once the cultural barrier is overcome, what I see as other barriers in the country, it's regarding like the whole electoral process, including the candidacy, when you launch your candidacy for like any political role, the election itself, and during the mandate. And these challenges are very linked to this patriarchal nature of the political parties itself, a structure that's planned by man to man. So like we feel like we don't fit in this place. Another barrier that I want to raise is political violence. It has been growing. If you occupy more space, the political violence increase more and more. And one very emblematic example that gained like international visibility was the murder of Marielle Franco, a councilwoman from Rio de Janeiro that was brutally murdered 7 years ago in March 2019. During her political mandate. So this is like very important that gained this visibility. But I think it's also important to recognize some progress despite all the challenges that we still face. And I think any progress that we achieve in Brazil, it's thanks to a strong women's mobilization that managed to have changes in legislation, aligned with an increased number of training activities to better prepare the women candidates, and a lot of campaigns launched in the country. In the late 90s, just to give an example, we had a huge campaign, a national campaign called Women Do Not Be Afraid of Power. And one of the important achievements of this campaign was like the quota law in Brazil from 1996 that established at least 30% of female candidates it started to be the political parties start to respond to this quota law, because before that the law was there but they didn't implement it, and we still need to monitor the implementation of this law. Also, another important achievement was like a few years later, we established that 30% of the electoral funds should be reserved to women candidates. So it was not enough to have the quota law. We also need to have access to resource in order to be able to dispute equally any roles in political parties. Also, I mentioned political violence against women. And I think another achievement that's recently we had in Brazil a specific law regarding political violence against women. So this is important because established that this violence was a crime. So just to finish, I think it's important to say that we are increasing. It's getting better, the representation of women in politics in Brazil, but it's still very low. We have a long way to go. And especially if you talk about Afro-descendant women, their representation, it's even lower. So it's important to have also this intersectional perspective when we talk about women in politics in Brazil. Thank you.
Thank you for your excellent overview of the challenges, the progress that you're making. Now, we would like to travel to Pakistan, and we have with us Rabea. Rabea, could you share with us on women's political participation in Pakistan? Are you seeing significant improvements with, there was the reforms over the last few years, electoral reforms, especially in legislative bodies? Yet, when we look at women's substantive political activism and high voting, you would think we would have better representation of women in decision-making positions and in your political party leadership and structure, but the numbers are actually decreasing in Pakistan. Can you tell us more about the low commitment to women's meaningful political leadership? And, just like in Brazil, in your country, you had a woman president that was really renowned the world over. So your country has shown that women can hold the highest political office, yet women still struggle to be adequately represented in politics. What's going on there, and what can we do?
Thank you, Afsat, for giving me for inviting me on this forum and give us a space to talk about Pakistan. As an organization, we had taken a lot of initiatives in past, and which has substantial impact in the country. Our political education program brought many women in the parliament, and they actually make a difference within the parliament. And we always said that we developed a women's movement within the parliament. We've all been trained through a democratic process and been trained on horizontal leadership. And those women, when they joined the parliament, they brought a lot of legislation. And people always says that Pakistan is one of the over-legislated countries in terms of legislation. But when it comes to implementation, has a lot of challenges. But over 4 or 5 years, we've been facing a lot of issues in terms of security, economic situation. As Andrea said, the environment is not very feasible across around the world. So women are also very reluctant coming forth to many leadership positions. Priorly, we have women speaker in the National Assembly. Even in the states, provincial assemblies, we have women speakers, ministers. But now the situation is very different. Government has made a lot of policies which restricts women's, leadership also. The political office holder has to go through the agency scrutiny and move forward. Women are easily targeted and they're vocal, so and they keep pushing them back. Political parties also has their own priorities now for their survival. So the priority is the most acceptable is who always say yes to, in all in the situation, and it's more favorable to everyone. So they picked up those women. They're not really interested on those who have been involved in activism and been vocal and raised voices within the parliament. So that is one of the major reason of backlash. Then constant political instability within the country, religious or political violence and extremism. Also, reserve seats, and we have a lot of legislations, but recently Aurat filed a petition against that. In the previous election, they didn't follow the 5% open constituency. None of the parties, except two of them, none of the parties follow that criteria. And High Court of Pakistan High Court directed Election Commission of Pakistan to take action on this petition, but they have not taken any action on it, and they're least bothered. And none of the political parties are serious to give winnable constituencies to women. So what we have seen, women normally came on reserve seats, and they don't have any constituency, so they have weak position in the parliament. So those who come up with the constituencies, they have stronger voices, because parties also have pressure that they have a vote bank, they have a constituency, so they give weightage to them.
Thank you, Rabea. Rabea, I'm looking forward to the next question I'll ask you, which is really around the work you're doing on all of this, because I have to say that I'm a little depressed listening to the account you just gave. So I'll come back to you shortly. But for now, let us go visiting Indonesia and visit our friend Siti in Indonesia. Siti, despite some of the improvements in parliamentary representation through gender quotas and other affirmative action policies, women elected candidates remain underrepresented in Indonesian politics. What are some of the factors that contribute to this underrepresentation?
Thank you, Hafsat. And it's very nice to be in this forum again. And I thank you for WLP, especially for the opportunity to share our work in Indonesia. I'm so pleased to be in this forum. To answer the questions briefly, but the challenges that the Brazil case and the Pakistani cases is pretty much the same what we are facing in Indonesia. I want to give a profile briefly what happened in Indonesia since 1999 to the last in February last election, general elections. So we have, if you can tell all the way to the bottom, if we are talking about this underrepresentation, the law on quota system for women is on for the candidacy, not for reserve seat. So we have seen in the bottom of the percentage of women elected, it started from 8%. And it just varies from 17%. There's nothing happened almost from 2009, 2014, despite so much work that we've been doing with women. And, you know, the resistance within political parties are, it's hard to break unless there is other stakeholders who can interfere. But if it's face-to-face women and political parties, it will be, I'm saying not possible, but it's the hardest wall to break. Women should coalition with not just women's political caucus or, you know, other NGOs, but it's also have like media, for example, has to be constantly being engaged to change the public opinion, because as we know, democracy processes are not straightforward processes. It's always process that is back and forth, back and forth. And we can see it from here, from 99 to 2004 to 24. We never reached to, you know, regardless, even some party, the percentage of the candidate can reach up to 37% in 2019. But the elected is not, you know, we haven't reached 2020 beyond 21%. Starting from 2004, the election mandate, the female candidate should be at least 30%. If a party are not fulfilling, if political party are not fulfilling their 30% of the quota system, they will not able to contest the election in that particular district, electoral district. So that makes, and this is like in 2014, a huge commotion within the political parties to meet these 30%. It is not nothing easy at all for them. They are just frantically, I mean, the political party officials frantically going after women who, regardless who they are. It's just amazing to see. I'm just like, like 30%, it's just that because of these administrative requirements require numbers of documents. So they just, people from certain district, even, especially if it's outside Java Island, it's much harder in terms of mobility and communication, methods. The last impactful law in this election is that we have a system of the ballot structure is open list. It means we have women can be in, it doesn't have to be number one to be elected. So for example, Gerindra party, this is like the ruling party right now. It has the highest number of women in ranked first on ballot. And apparently, as you can see here, Gerindra has right now 19 women, 22% of women. So but at the same time, we also have the PPP, the religious party, who also has the highest number of women who ranked first on ballot, but right now has a zero female in the Congress. So so this is debatable whether having women, if we are demand for women to be listed as in rank first on ballot will also, could be swayed in different ways. But at least it's important, I think, to create an environment where the affirmative action it's enforced in some sort, because there are a number of access problems. So as any policy or law that support women to get more chances to be elected, and at the same time gradually changing the public opinion and the opinion of the other political parties official, especially male, to be more empathy, to have more understanding on some of the challenges that women has, just to be able to be sitting together with them where they're coming from. It's very important. Law and policy are in place, but remain the culture, as other colleagues from Brazil and in Pakistan have said, is still women are still very much often being subject of ridicule, either it's from their the body image, for example, from appearance, from their intellectual, they were so much more expectation for women's politicians to be far, far smarter. The media also need to be trained and need to be engaged to continue to build a positive image of women in public spheres, especially in a political space. Thank you.
Thank you, Siti, for your excellent overview of the reality in Indonesia. I'm looking forward to our conversation with you on the work that you've been doing to address the kinds of challenges that you've illustrated and shared with us. But for now, may I go back to Brazil, to Andrea? Andrea, can you tell us what SEPIA and other CSOs in Brazil are doing to address this dynamics for women's political leadership, and what still needs to be done?
Thank you, Rabia and Siti, for sharing the experience in your countries. And Hafsa, thank you for your question, because I think it's after such a complex and I would say negative scenario of women's political participation in those various countries, I think it's important also that we can share some of the strategies that we are developing, and also to put some hope in the table, in the discussion. So thank you for the question. So I believe that all that we have been doing in the past 35 years somehow contribute directly or indirectly to increasing women's political participation in Brazil, and also to strengthen democracy, because if we lack women in politics and we lack like access to rights and better condition to the women, we cannot talk about democracy. We cannot talk about full democracy in a country where women are so underrepresented in political arena, and that we challenge daily to access our rights. So somehow I believe that we have been contributing to this collective effort to have more women in politics and to improve the situation of women in general. Also, like I mentioned on the previous questions, I think it's very important to say that the work that we develop, it's based on the understanding that women's is not an homogeneous category, it's not an homogeneous group. So it's always important to have this intersectional perspective when we talk about the women and the strategies that we develop to improve or to contribute to improve the situation of women in society. I also think that's very important to say that for CEPIA to be part of Women's Learning Partnership, this like Global South network, it's very important because it brings to our national and local activities a more international perspective. So the initiatives that we take and the strategy that we have been developing in the country to improve the participation of women in politics are various, from various fronts. I would say advocacy for changes laws and policies, sensitizing stakeholders and key actors, like my friends mentioned, how important it is to have other allies, develop capacity building and training programs, dialoguing with the media. So I think they are like multiple initiatives, since what we need is to promote like a structural and sustainable change in our society. And civil society organizations have like a very powerful role on that. Also, I think it's important to mention that we play the role as amicus curiae, friends of the court, on a ruling on the Federal Supreme Court. I think it was 2018 or around that date, where exactly, like I mentioned on the other question, we were very successful in demanding that at least 30% of the public electoral resource be assured to women candidates, because it's not enough to have the quota law to assure the seats. We need to have access to resource. And it had like a very positive impact on the election of the same year, 2018, increasing the number of women elected to Congress. So we see that resource is also important. Regarding campaigns, that's another front that we have been working. A lot of campaigns developed by many like CSO organizations in the country are taking place, but I will mention around our 2022 election, and a lot of progressive CSOs organization mobilized because we want to engage more youth in voting. In Brazil, it's important to say that voting is mandatory from the age of 18, but between 16 and 17, it's optional. And we really think that the youth should play an important role in this election. And a lot of campaigns took place, and CPIA's campaign was called Seu Voto Muda Tudo, your vote can change everything. And we invite the youth to engage in the electoral process, in voting, but also we inform them about the responsibilities of a mayor, a local council, a federal deputy, so they could understand better the agenda of the candidates and have a more like a vote awareness vote. As for training and capacity building, that's another front of work. A lot of organizations, academic institutions, UN agents develop like training programs for women candidates to improve their knowledge, their skills, their information about what's the political arena, the challenges, the instruments. Specific programs to Black, to Afro-descendant women also took place, increasing in the country. But I think it's important to mention that although those training programs are being held in the country, there is unfulfilled demand for such programs, given the size of Brazil, the complexity of Brazil, and also the diversity of female potential candidates. I will pick two examples in terms of training. One was a training political capacity building for women online program that CEPIA developed jointly with Women's Learning Partnership and UNFPA. And this was not addressed to women candidates, but at women at large, for them to have more information about law, international instruments that protect them, public policies, strategies that they could develop in terms of digital security and political gender-based violence. It was a very interesting experience. And we gather scholars, activists, and politicians to share their experience, their knowledge about this topic. And also, just to finish, I think it's also important to say that when we talk about women's political participation and how important, how central it is to strengthen democracy, democratic institutions, to assure rights, it's important that also we think about like regional initiatives and thinking about, for instance, Latin America. In 2022, CEPIA started what we call a dialogue, a Latin American dialogue for democracy and women's human rights. This was an initiative jointly with the Women's Learning Partnership that we felt that would be important to build dialogue and bridges with other organizations in the region, to learn from them, because the situation is different in terms of women's political participation in each country. In some countries, the women are much better represented than in others. So it's interesting that in this initiative, this regional dialogue, one of the major topics that was decided to be urgent was women's political participation, political violence against women. If you want to strengthen democracy in the region, this would be a topic to be addressed. And the result of this initiative was a publication. It's Portuguese and Spanish. Maybe you can read, Hafsat, to train your Portuguese. And it's interesting because it shares the experience of many countries in terms of how they improve women's political participation and the challenge that they face, for instance, in Mexico, in Brazil, in Peru, and so on. So as you can see, there are many examples of initiatives held in this regard, developed by civil society organizations in Brazil. And we are sure that has been helping to design or to improve the situation, but we still have a long way to go. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Andrea. I think it's so important that CEPIA has been there as a mainstay in Brazil through military dictatorships, through the period of people being incarcerated for trying to fight the dictatorship, through all those periods. And now I love the part where you said you were a friend of the courts, to help the courts and helping to monitor the implementation of laws. You know, it's all these kinds of steps that's going to make a difference in a country like Brazil that has so much complexity, but yet so much potential. And already is, I think, one of the top 10 biggest economies in the world. So it's really, really exciting and motivating to see the difference you're making. Thank you so much. Rabea, to you in Pakistan, you know, Aurat Foundation has historically been involved in empowering women's political leadership. Can you expand on some of that work and touch on the interventions that, can you expand on some of that work and touch on what interventions will be helpful to reverse the current barriers to true empowerment of women in decision-making roles and leadership in Pakistan?
Thank you. Aurat has been engaged since beginning, since inception of Aurat, 1986, been, and the strong belief of Aurat, it's a niche that they believe on women political and economic empowerment. So since then they've been working on it. They've run a massive program across the country on women's political education program, in which they have trained a lot of women at grassroots level, at the local governance level, and then those women were able to be a part of the national parliament and also the provincial parliament. Also, Aurat over the years supported women leaders to how to and educate them how to file their nominations during elections, and they've been trained on it, and also financially support many women to reach at the level of member of the parliament, you know, and also run elections. And that was very helpful because we brought them into the mainstream at the decision-making bodies, and they did make a difference in their domains. Across Pakistan, we have a domestic violence law, except the Federal Capital Territory, which is so unfortunate. Still now we don't have, but across Pakistan, we have a domestic violence law. And also these women speakers, they were so actively engaged in the monitoring mechanism also. So they keep asking, they keep questioning the authorities that why there is a low conviction rate and all. Then developing sexual violence frameworks with the support of different agencies also was helpful for women and girl child accessing justice. Training with working with the judiciary and bringing trained a lot of women judges. It also make a lot of difference within the judiciary and accessing justice for women and children across Pakistan is one of the, the biggest initiative, working with the police officers, especially the women police officers, and developing GBV cadre, dealing with violence against women cases is one of the achievement. Along that, a constant monitoring of legislative process within the assembly and legislative business, and educating people and the circles also make a lot of difference in the country and in the women's political empowerment. Registration was a key issue in Pakistan, for birth registration to women registration also. So, or Aurat also, when we were in a grant making role, we signed an MOU, memorandum of understanding with National Database Authority, and we have registered women across Pakistan. So once they get registered, they also get registered as voters as well, and they are able to cast their votes and participate in the democratic process, which increase number of voting women voting in previous elections. Also, we have developed working with the youth, develop women, the youth networks, voting networks, so that those youth networks increase a lot of women, the younger lot to participate in the electoral process. And in the previous elections, we have seen the 60% of the population as youth. Among them, almost 40% cast their votes. So that was a huge number, and process in getting engaged in electoral process. Then our major role with the judiciary and filing petitions in different elections where we have observed Aurat has been involved in election observation. So where we found that there is less than 10% or 15% women casting list votes, or there is no voting of women in certain constituencies. We filed petitions against them to ECP, and we won those cases where we forced the government to redo the election in certain areas. So these are the key interventions we have done, and we did make a difference across Pakistan.
So well done. Well done, Rabea. I hope over the coming decades, we'll be able to celebrate 30 to 40 and then 50% women's representation in the political system in Pakistan, and not just president, which we had when we had Benazir Bhutto, but across the leadership of your country. And I'm confident that we will through the kind of work you're doing. Siti, I would like to come to you now. You had you had said that your organization has been training female candidates from 11 political parties to run safe online campaigns by raising awareness on disinformation against female candidates in the lead up to the February 2024 elections. Can you tell us more about the impact of the training sessions and what challenges still remain?
Thank you, Afsat. Yes, WIDI is not as old organization. We are just starting in 2013. So we are reaching to 16 years now. And primarily we are working with youth leadership mostly, and women's activists, and including women's in political parties or women's political space. So the last training, we have election in February last year, and we have done numbers of training, especially to fight disinformation against women candidates, mostly on the social media platform, because that's where people get their information most of the Indonesian people get the information mostly from social media platform instead of the mainstream. Nowadays, newspaper is no longer printing. People don't watch mainstream media like the national television anymore. So they only just streaming on their gadgets and see things in every day. They can access to more than 10 to 20 news item or just posting. And this thing that actually penetrate people, especially youth and either male or female, to get, I started to build their idea. What is it about women's in political sphere? What do they do? All these questions is somehow is auto answer by the social medias that is streaming and coming in. It's like flooding, and there is no way to regulate or no way to recheck, because if it's not mainstream media, there is, people can just posting whatever they feel like to. And that's why we are with 11 political parties that we used work in the past, and we asked them to send their candidates, most promising candidates, to be in our training. And I think what the impact is pretty profound on how the two core elements or impacts that we see is that the trainings have eliminated a certain level of shame or fear of women. And these two points of feeling ashamed or feeling that, the fear of something is the main kind of messages that is distributed to social medias on how to make women feel so conscious and about everything else but their mission, or about their vision why they're running for office, because this information contents mostly is about an attacks to anything but women's capacity. So, like I have mentioned earlier about the body image, the intellectual capacity, their parenting skills, why they are outside, well, at 10 p.m. while when they are supposed to be inside the house, be with their family, parenting skill, domestic obligations, as well as the fear of leaving, offending others, especially their male candidate. That's another big uh, areas that we are trying to really, this training is to provide was to discuss that, fighting the idea of the being subject of shame and fear, so that they can be focused and concentrate to run their campaign and eliminate those feelings and be considered like focus with being a competent leaders within their own team. Many of our trainees, it's very interestingly shared with us that their experience in training with us are the first information or the first knowledge building that they received. They not receive some sort or this type of training from their own political parties. We've seen this is very powerful tools on how women, you can work together and trust each other, because their enemy when they're running for election is not women from other political parties, but women from their own parties and men from their own political parties. The political parties mostly across of all these 10 political parties, their main concern is just to fulfill the requirement 30%, not to genuinely support women as women to be, sitting with them and making decisions together with them.
We just had down to the last 12 minutes of our session. So I'm wondering if we can have all the panelists together on the screen. So here are the questions. Can you clarify what you mean by political-based violence? More details on this concept would be appreciated, and any relevant resources would be helpful. Second question, what are some strategies for cross-country collaboration to accelerate women's political leadership and protect gains made in gender equality? Third question, how do we ensure women feel safe running for and holding political office, especially in the face of online and offline gender-based political violence? And the fourth question is directly to Rabea. How do we address the most significant challenges Pakistani women face when running for? There was one more question in the Q&A, and this one was directly to Siti. Indonesia politics is now back to authoritarianism, and this needs to be addressed. We are not okay now, as the nepotism and militarism is real. So Siti, if you have any reactions to that, that would be great. Now, the question from us at WLP is a very simple question. The way in which WLP creates programs is in partnership with you guys on the ground all over the world. So we want to know if you had the resources for a program to increase the rate of women who support gender-responsive policies in elected and public office, how would you use it?
I was thinking of one of the questions regarding how we assure a safer place to women that runs for politics. I wish I had this answer. Maybe I have some ideas or suggestions, but I think this is something that you are facing in all the countries, and we are learning together. And I think it's many strategies But certainly all what we have been doing and what the Women's Learning Partnership have been doing, it's towards creating safer space. So I think like coalition building, access to knowledge, laws, legislation, policies, denouncing also like political gender-based violence. There are all like various strategies to create like a safer place for us in the political arena. So thank you for the question, and I think it's an interesting exercise of reflection on strategies that we could like increase regarding gender responsive policies. And I see that all the challenges that we share here, I see that also as possible of opportunities. We can like change the challenges to opportunities for change. So I think this question deals a lot about that. And regarding more like gender responsive policies, I think it's important to say that it's not because a woman was voted means that she'll have like a gender responsive approach to her political agenda. And just to give you an example, like I said, we did saw an increase, a slight increase in formal political representation of women in Brazil. We still have a long way to go. We are only like around 15%, for instance, of mayors in the country, representing a small parcel. And I think it's important to say, for instance, that among the 720 or 28 women elected as mayors in 2024, the majority of those women came from conservative parties. So not necessarily will defend gender-sensitive policies. And like Siti was showing her slide, it's very important also to make a broader analysis, understanding who are these women, who are their agenda. So being a female does not necessarily equate to defending women's rights. The same situation we face in Brazil in the National Congress, not only on the local level, but on the National Congress. It's a Congress that's composed mainly by white men, where we face those challenges, and the 18% of seats that women conquer there also, most of those seats are women elected from the extreme right party. And indeed, a study showed that Congress women were responsible to present a significant number of law projects that were not favorable to a gender equal agenda. So I think it's urgent, and if we have the resource, that we invest in sensitizing and training women candidates that to make sure that they will encompass a women's rights agenda on the various law projects that they might propose, including education, labor, health, social security, and not specifically like on issues addressing women, I don't know, maternity leave and feminicide prevention. It's important that this is a central part of their agenda. I truly believe that we need not only more women in politics, but we need that these women speak for other women, even when this contradicts their political party. So I think like a training program would be an important way to go. Just to give the opportunity for my colleagues to talk, I just want to finish saying that I think it's important that in this program, we think of other like creative ways to mobilization, to political organization, for instance, based on collective leadership, what we call in Brazil mandato coletivo, that has been increasing in the country, raising the voice of other like underrepresented groups.
Rabea, Pakistan.
Thank you. The first thing, the direct question from me, like how women can secure the public offices, So I feel that we have legislations and all, but I believe that it has to be more gender responsive. If we can develop an ecosystem needs to be created, which will be focused on multi-tiered strategy that builds political capacity, strengthen the networks, and challenges societal norms that hinder women, participation overall in the political sphere. And also for political office holders, the strong law and order situation needs to be improved. Otherwise, it is a threat to both. So, and along that, it is very important. It's a right time to invest more on the youth development and youth leadership, because the our prior experience working with the caucuses, working on different, the age group currently sitting in the parliament, we need a more younger blood, and we need to invest more and more. And that is very, very important, because they're energetic, they are uh, tuned to, they're more tech savvy. The older generation is not very, technology friendly. So, and also need to create the spaces within the within online spaces and resources for women. I feel that in Pakistan we are lacking in it, and also a mentorship opportunities required, because many of them are very good in writing or blog writers and all, but they are directionless. So how safely they can, and they can safely use those forums and educate others, and also do their component online safely. We need to train them. And also, if for the women parliamentarians, WLP resource material, in the last trainings we also discussed, a lot of women are facing, political women are facing cyberbullying and online violence also. So they are not trained enough how to tackle with all these things. So we need to develop, and all from a WLP context and resources, that is very important, that we we do have exchange programs, and we have learned a lot from each other experiences, but it has to be ongoing. And also we need to develop a cadre, as I've mentioned, a younger cadre. They also have interaction across the country within the partnership, so they can learn from other experiences. And in Pakistan, we actually did make a difference, especially while conducting trainings and TOTs with the media groups. And we have created spaces at make changes at the constitutional level within the media fraternity. There was no space for press clubs to women to participate in the general elections. There's no space in the labor federation to women to participate in the on their key positions. So we did make changes in the constitution through this WLP curriculum and training, and develop that women leadership within those fraternities in the trade unions. So that's how we can make difference within the parliament and other public offices holders, to make difference through different resources and curriculum.
Thank you, Rabea. Thank you very much. Siti, we're pretty much at time, so I'd like you to offer your thoughts to your question and your thoughts to the question of the WLP program.
Thank you, Hafsat. WLP has numbers of different kind of resources that we have been using. It, the videos, the manuals. That was very helpful in terms of how we actually adapt it into our own context. And the intersectionality approach is, I believe, is the way to reach out to so many different women of different backgrounds, women of different social background, educational backgrounds. And, because arts, I see, can universalize a message of, big message into people's own experience, whether it's cultural experience, religious experience, and social. So that's why I really make an effort. I mean, our team really make an effort to, as much as we could to have intersectionalities using arts, using media, using some of these videos that it can really embolden or enrich the message, that also to get the message easier to receive. I myself a journalist some months years ago, so I really believe, and also one thing is about how we change people's opinions. And as I mentioned, democracy is not a one-way straight like process. Look at where we are right now in Indonesia, in the region, the Philippines, Indonesia, Thailand, and in the US, some of these countries were pioneers in democracy in the 70s, or in the US, in the US, in the World War II, and where we are right now. That's what I see is the continues to build or sharpen the public opinions that pro-women, pro-diversity, democracy it's an endless job for all of us, for the government and for the people, of course, and for people who are working with numbers of stakeholders like us. First, we should refuse to be afraid. This is what now we have a fear-mongering officials, political parties, officials, leader, the return of the military power gradually, like seeping in the countries. I would say we should refuse to be afraid. And one way to do it, I said, get organized. But I think we have to know about the law, read all the legal. Nowadays, even during the election, the government often use this ITE, the electronic law, to file for defamations to anybody they don't like. And that can be really, it has been proven to be effective for government to silence certain individuals, certain activists. And I think, yes, we have to get organized and not to be solo in any activities that we think, building broader coalition. I think that is necessary, and I think is must to continue our work. Otherwise, we just cut through, prematurely.
Thank you, Siti.
Thank you.
Thanks to our panelists for your incredible dedication and your really noble, courageous work of shaping the future. None of the plans of the governments of Brazil, of Indonesia, of Pakistan can be realized without you and the work you're doing. And I want to end with the last point that all of you made in different ways. It doesn't matter who I am. It doesn't matter who each one of you is. It's who we are together.